All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today at this year's Unsung Voices info session. My name is Jennifer. I'm one of the coordinators of the program, along with Haris and Joseph this year. And I'm also joined by Samyukta and Yi, who are past participants from last year's cohort. So at this info session, we're just going to start off actually with some intros, and then we'll do a screening of some clips from Samyukta's and Yi's films. And then there will be an opportunity to ask them some questions at the end, but I'll also go over the program outline and sort of break it down so you get a sense of what it's like over the summer. And we'll also have some application tips, and you'll also have the opportunity to ask us questions about that. So just throughout this presentation, if there are any questions pertaining to something that I just said or something that's on the screen, do let us know in the chat, and our moderator will forward that to me, and I'll try to answer it right then and there. Otherwise, if you have any more general questions about the program, the applications, and the films that we're screening, you can leave those to the end, and we'll take them up. So yeah, I think I just did my intro here, and I'll let Samyukta and Yi continue.
Hi, my name is Samyukta, and I'm a writer and filmmaker based in Toronto.
Hi, my name is E. I use they them pronoun. I'm a filmmaker now, and other multidisciplinary artist and tattooer based in Toronto, Canada. Where I'm at right now, I'm in a different time zone, so it's 7 a.m. and pardon me if my brain is lagging.
Thanks, everyone. So yeah, we're going to start with showing a 1-minute clip from your films. So for some of those watching here, well, Yi and Samyukta, you were also sort of in the same position they were in this time last year, being given this prompt through the Unsung Voices application and responding to that. And your prompt last year was wide open. This year is which is kind of hard to pronounce because you can actually pronounce it in many ways. It could be a scream or like a sigh. But Yi, maybe you can tell us before we share your clip what you were thinking when you were responding to Wide Open and writing up your project proposal.
Yeah, sure, because I remember my proposal was kind of very detailed at that time because I had an idea already, but I kind of had that idea a month or two before even sending in the application because I know about this program for a couple of years at that time, and last year was finally the time when I felt like I had time to take time off from work and actually work on this in the summer. So when I had the idea, it was during like a slightly hard time, a weird time in my in the year. So kind of my way of coping in the past was just to when something hits, when I had a lot of feelings, I put it into work in some kind of form of art. And this time I decided to try something new. Don't do that all the time. Go find a therapist. But you can also do that if you feel like inspirations hit. So that was how the inspirations came along, kind of. But it's not completely the same as a personal story. It's just I take some inspirations from what I and my other friends who were going through the similar things are experiencing and try to make it into a story. So it was my first time writing a narrative film too, or even just writing any story from the beginning to the end. So later on, I just thought maybe I can give it a try and it's fun, right? So definitely you have to enjoy the process. So that's how my film came about.
Yeah, so I guess you're saying it was sort of serendipitous, like at the moment that the applications were open, there was something you already wanted to make. So for some of you who are considering applying, that is definitely the way that you can go about it. Please don't feel like the theme actually restricts you. So maybe you can describe, I guess, did Wide Open sort of make you feel strongly about that particular feeling or experience that you wanted to tap into? Or do you have any tips for how you were able to sort of write that into your proposal?
Yeah, sure. At first, I didn't know it would be given a topic, but then when I saw the proposal, I'm like, oh, that kind of fits this year's theme too. Because when I thought about Wide Open, it's being a new immigrant in the country, sometimes being stuck on different labels, like ESL or being queer or being a minority. It's kind of it's like one person being faced with so many choices at any given time, especially when you tap into a completely new world, new environment. Like choices are wide open, and your future is wide open. You don't know which way you're going, but somehow you choose one path, and then there are many more different little paths that come up. So that's what I thought about how my film would potentially relate to the theme, and I also just went with it. And with a proposal, I kind of also tried to analyze my idea and then wrote about it that way.
Great. And can you give us a bit of an intro or context around the clip that we're about to play?
Oh yeah, sure. So my film, oh wow, such a long time ago. Feels like a lifetime ago. But my film is about a new immigrant away from home, being unable to go home because of all kinds of circumstances at that time, and then trying to find comfort in someone that she just met.
Great, thank you. And for those watching, just please give me a second here to switch some things around so that we can show the film. And we're actually going to turn our own video off, and I will play the clip right now.
也是，不过现在也变得好像哪里都不是家的样子。
Well, did you ever feel at home here?
Would I feel at home anywhere? 记忆里的家乡，寒了味道，夏日已老。人间蚊虫飞舞，潮湿的空气总让人喘不过气来。再到夜幕降临的时候。Cooked before in my life. You have to make a okay. Oh no.
All right, thank you so much. I will have more questions for you later about the production side of that clip and what it was like working with actors and directing them for the first time. But next is Samyuktha. So yeah, Samyuktha, you can tell us a little bit more about what you were feeling or thinking about as you were going through this application process and how it kind of eventually led to the clip that you're showing us here.
So similar to Yi, I'd known about the Unsung Voices program for a few years before applying, but also didn't feel ready to apply, but then I just finally decided to do it. So I guess first I'll start by saying if anyone in the audience is on the fence, to just take that leap of faith and just apply, because you never know. But dissimilar to Yi, I didn't have a specific story going into it. So I guess on the flip side, I don't think you need to have something very specific in mind necessarily when you apply, because the great thing about the program is that it caters to kind of someone with a ready-made script and then someone with just a very, vague idea of what they want to explore. So that was, the latter was very much my experience, where I tried to think of a actual story in a traditional narrative style when I saw the prompt, but I realized that the things I was thinking of weren't that interesting to me. So instead, my approach when I saw the prompt of Wide Open was just trying to adapt some of the themes that I was already interested in and some of these kind of characters that I'd had in my mind for a while and trying to adapt them to the theme rather. And I just found myself far more interested in the actual application and just excited about the program that way. And I think that's maybe part of the reason why I was able to get in, because that excitement might have gotten across. So Wide Open for me, I'd always wanted to do a film about South Asian women of a certain demographic, older South Asian women of my mother's age, so someone in their 60s or someone just that I've not seen traditionally represented on screen. So my approach to the theme was that I thought, okay, what if you had a character who had like a shift in their identity? You know, they've had an identity for this many years of their life, maybe several decades. And in my case, I wanted to explore the character in the sense of a wife. What happens when identity is taken away? So on one hand, your identity is now a blank canvas, and you can kind of, you know, like you can take on different aspects of yourself that maybe you weren't able to explore. But at the same time, I thought, okay, well, that transition isn't always easy. So that's kind of the approach that I went to when I approached this character of this wife who is transitioning between the identity of a wife to that of a widow. And so in that, using things like nonlinear storytelling and exploring aspects of memory and taking a bit of a more experimental approach than I was comfortable with. Just because I had the support of the program to do that for the first time, that's what the film ended up being over the course of 5 or 6 months. But it definitely changed a lot over those few months. So my headspace when I applied was very different from my headspace when the film finished and screened. But that being said, I will say I think the kernel of that initial idea and my initial kind of impetus for applying stayed throughout the entire thing. So I ultimately ended up being very happy with what I was able to screen, and I think it was true to my intention at the end.
Thank you. That is so interesting to hear about, because I know going through the program as the coordinator, I saw the behind the scenes of your editing stage, and I guess we can talk a little bit more about that, especially after watching the clip and seeing how you went from your mood boards to this excerpt here. So we're going to turn off your video again, and I will play the video now.
The dream, the one in which you're happy. Which one is that?
ఒక రాత్రి ఈ రాత్రి లాగా మేము కలిసి ఉన్నాం. ఇద్దరు ప్రేమికులు జీవితాన్ని గడుపుతున్నాం. ఈ కళ నిజం ఎట్లా కాదు?
All right, both beautiful works. I'm really excited to now talk a little bit more about the program, and then we're also going to see how you approached each stage of the program. So on the application site, you may have already seen a sort of schedule, a breakdown of how the program runs, but we think of it in 3 stages. We start with pre-production. So, you do submit a project proposal, but that doesn't mean that you're expected to come in with a script, though that is possible. But even if you do come in with a script, there is some workshopping. And if you come in with sort of like a vague idea or, that kernel of inspiration, as Samyukta mentioned, there are a couple of weeks there where you're workshopping that before you go into production, and then finally post-production. So, all right, I think I did not share my slides yet. Give me a moment here, and I will show you sort of our calendar here. All right, so just want to make sure it's sharing. Okay. All right, so up here we have sort of a calendar to show you what pre-production looks like. The program starts on May 18th. Pre-production is sort of about 6 weeks. And during this time, it's pretty intensive. We meet twice a week for about 2 to 3 hours. And during these sessions, that's when we're sort of keeping each other updated on your writing. But you're also going through sort of technical workshops as well. There are also guest speakers. And we have mentors who also give artist talks who talk about their sort of career trajectory, and you're able to, participate in this Q&A and get a sense of how they approach their filmmaking. Each participant is also matched with a mentor that you work with one-on-one about 3 to 4 times throughout the program. And during this pre-production stage, that is when you're going to be matched with a mentor. And we try to find someone that sort of is working in the same genre as you, so you can get some more useful inspiration from them. By the end of this pre-production phase, you're also going to do some budgeting and production planning. So just to give you an idea of the resources that you're going to be working with, you'll get up to $750 toward your production, up to $1,000 in equipment rental credits. So the program is nationwide, and we do partner with artist-run centers across the country for you to be able to access discounted equipment and get those credits. And you are also given a $1,500 honorarium. So there's a small honorarium for your participation in the program. So yeah, I'm wondering if maybe Samyukta, you can start and tell us a little bit more about the ideation and writing. And you have these really amazing mood boards here. Maybe you can let us know a little bit more about them.
Yeah, so coming in with more of a kernel of an idea, but also wanting to explore a lot of kind of big sweeping themes and a lot of important topics that have kind of been with me for many years. The first, I think, month and a half turned into that initial idea turning into a 12-page script, which was very ambitious and very kind of just convoluted in a way. So speaking of being paired up with a mentor, having my mentor's support and also the support of everyone in the actual cohort, and also the program coordinators, everybody, it really helped to kind of pare down that idea into something a lot simpler, but a lot more, I think, effective. Because there was this thing of when you start from scratch, you try to do too much, and sometimes the simplest kind of execution of something can be the most poignant. And I think that's what ended up happening. But I decided to shoot my own film instead of doing an open call for crew, because I wanted to work with my own mom, and because she's not an actress, and because the story was so kind of difficult in many aspects, I thought it would be best that I be the one behind the camera. So what you see on the upper right of the screen are kind of just shot references I had, or the some scenes showing her kind of going through the day. Funnily enough, these shots didn't make it to the final film, but I'm sure we'll talk about that when we get to the editing process, just how the film can, change a lot over the course of 5 months. But below that was a production schedule I made, which was, again, very ambitious, but it was great to have these kind of, streamlined workshops every week that kept us on track. And so every week we were doing different technical aspects. So when we were doing cinematography, we would get to do like cinematography exercises in terms of shot listing and, pulling up visual references. So it kept you on track, and it made that whole experience, not to say that it wasn't stressful, just because, it's still quite a limited amount of time, and coming into it without formal filmmaking experience, everything was new and fresh, but I felt like there was a lot of support along the way, and it helped keep me on track. So it was stressful, but fun, and everything worked out in the end.
I am glad that you mentioned it was both stressful and fun. So yes, it is quite busy because you're meeting twice a week, but also you're doing a lot of sort of the upfront work of planning and, learning and doing at the same time. I guess for Yi, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about your mood board, and maybe the both of you could also share a little bit about what it was like to work with your mentor through this writing stage.
Yeah, sure, of course. I feel like when I had the idea, especially during the application process, I had no idea what my script is going to be specific. But and I never wrote a script before, so that's that one thing that I was very worried about coming into the program. But at that time, I already had some of the scenes constructed in my head because I came from more of a photography slash illustration background. So at that time, visualizing a scene was slightly easier for me than visualizing a dialogue somehow. Um, so I had some of this. I actually didn't share the storyboards, didn't send over the storyboard. My bad. But I did kind of storyboarding before I even had the script. So it was kind of fun because I did that for animation before too, but I never really tried doing it for a film before. So I drew that out, and then later on, when the program started, I fully went into writing the script. I think I was rushing it for a while, for the first 2 weeks with the script, because I didn't know how to write a script, and I kind of crash coursed it online with the videos, and I watched a lot of YouTube even outside of class because I usually get a lot of anxiety when it comes to kickstarting a project. So even though I know I'm good on good track, I'm taken care of with by the mentor and classes and everything, I still feel like I need to slightly go harder, just because I had no experience. Mm, but then also the mentor really helped. I think I had a lot more mentor calls early in the pre-production stages, because I needed a lot of help. And my mentor was Trisha, who's an amazing filmmaker in Toronto. So we had a lot of Zoom calls, I think. And I think we also are gonna be given a number of hours throughout the entire program. It's also just a matter of how often and in which stage you think you need more help from the mentor, and then you can kind of schedule that, and also schedule that with a coordinator, which is very helpful. For me, I need a lot of help before the production. So a lot of the script changed a lot even from the start too. I also was experiencing the same kind of problems as Samyukta. Like, I started off too ambitious and wrote too many things, and then realized there's no way I can finish it and make an 8-minute film out of it. And so with my mentor's help, I also tried to give up on some parts and then focus on what I needed to focus on, which is the main storyline, and also adjust scenes around with it. So same thing, kind of started off thinking of something too ambitious, and then later on, the final product is very different from what I thought of at first, which is a great thing. I'm glad it happened.
What I'm hearing here, the theme is, I guess, accountability and deadlines. So we don't want you to feel overwhelmed throughout the program. You're assigned a coordinator as well, in addition to your mentor, and the coordinator is always there for you to keep you on track each week and sort of figure out the project management and problem solve, or work with you to figure out how you're going to use the resources. Samyukta, would you like to speak a little bit more about working with your mentor?
Yeah, so I mean, the great thing about my mentor is I had VT90, who's a Asian Canadian filmmaker who I'd been following her career for the past few years. So it was such a pleasant surprise when I got to be paired with her. And I think, just like Yi said, it was a case of depending on where you were in the process of making the film, where you felt like you needed more help. So certainly when we were in the production stage, I wasn't meeting with Nini as much, but I think in the actual ideation stage and pre-production, and then definitely in post-production, just being able to bounce the film back and forth between the mentor and I. And then, I felt like I needed prep with my program coordinator, to prepare for my meeting with my mentor, just because, you want to have come, with your homework done. And I think that's something to be said for the whole program, especially that mentor participant relationship, which is just that you're going to get whatever you put into it back. So the more kind of effort and the more you put into it, the more you get back. And that's what I felt with my mentor. When I had more of the rough cuts of the film to share with her, I was able to get more tailored feedback that ended up being really beneficial. Whereas kind of earlier in the process, when I just had a lot of these big ideas, it was more, the advice of trim, cut. But I think all of that was necessary in order to get the film shaped to where it ended up being. And I think without any of those components, without any of those mentor meetings and any of those interactions with the program coordinators and everybody in the program, it couldn't have been what it ended up being. So I have to reiterate what you said. It ends up being, what it needs to be.
So great to hear. And yeah, I guess just reiterating the fact that there is a program coordinator you're working with to help you figure out, what you want to get out of that mentorship. And that kind of leads me as well into the production side of things and what it's like to work with the crew, but also what it's like to work on your own and in different roles on your own production. Sorry, I am just trying to figure out sharing my screen. All right. There we go. So you'll see here, there are 4 weeks allocated to production, but this does not mean that you are filming over 4 weeks. Most people do 2 to 3 days. But the reason this part of the program is 4 weeks is because this is the part where you might be recruiting crew, collaborators, casting, doing auditions, doing rehearsals. This is when you're going to figure out booking equipment, and we walk you through that as well. And then you'll have your shoot days. There's some flexibility here. So during this portion of the program, you're meeting once a week, but meeting once a week as a group, but you're also meeting once a week with your coordinator. So you have someone that you're working really closely one-on-one to sort of problem solve for any challenges that, might be coming up during this process. I do have here, I put that, there's recruiting crew and collaborators, but we've also had filmmakers in the past work completely on their own. Say, for example, if they were working in animation, or just, with a very small crew, if they were working documentary, then their situation might be a little bit different. Which actually reminds me, I'll talk a little bit more about the different genres. So yeah, with animation, your production schedule might look a little bit different. And again, that's something that you work out with your coordinator, and that you might actually be starting earlier and sort of editing at the same time. But this generally, the schedule is meant to keep you on track. And so that also when you're meeting as part of a group, you're all sort of on the same page or at the same step of your process. So you're able to actually still give each other feedback. Similar to animation with documentary, if that's something that you're proposing, then we might have to figure something out where you are starting filming and editing earlier, or, you're not filming for only 2 or 3 days, you're filming throughout this 4-week period. And then you'll still be able to bring something to share at the group sessions. I'm just going to check here. We have some questions. Number 1, can duos apply? Can a friend and I apply together if we already know we want to create together? Great, yeah, so we don't have that written in the application information, but if you are applying as a duo, you will apply separately, and you will fill out, your own separate answers for the part that is asking about you specifically, but then you'll, submit the same project proposal. And it would be helpful for us if you also mention in the About You section of the application your past experience working together. So yes, you can apply as a duo. And question 2 is, what are the minimum requirements to apply? Is selection criteria heavily revolved around prior experience within videography or film? So no, there is no requirement that you have gone to film school or that you have made a video. The program is open to both emerging and first-time filmmakers. I actually, when I did the program in 2016, I had not made a film before, but I had photography experience. So that's something I drew upon when I was filling out my application. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But in terms of eligibility, that would not exclude you if you have not done videography or film before. And I think, you said that was actually not your experience either, right? You were coming from an illustration background.
No, I wasn't. It was my first time making a film actually too. But I think before that, I kind of just shot things on my phone, or it's just for either for class or TikTok. So it's not really like a film thing.
That's
But
great. TikTok editing is an art. So.
Oh wow. Yeah, but I made sure I specifically wrote that out in the applications too. But I also supplemented a lot of more of my other works, like my photography, my illustration, that kind of things in my portfolio instead of videos, just videos.
Yeah, so I have up on the screen here, actually, there's some behind the scenes from your shoot. So yeah, you didn't have filmmaking experience before, but this was your first time casting and directing. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what that was like.
It was kind of fun. It was really fun, but a lot of serendipity moments, I think, following how even the project came along. Um, I feel like I had a lot of help, a lot of help from my friends because I reached out to my friends, kind of wanted to keep it more of a small project, intimate crew kind of thing, because I always have too much anxiety, especially on projects working with strangers. I'm not a very outspoken person, but it was really nice, and a lot of friends even came along after seeing me being in the program, work, studying, learning things, sharing about the program, and they would come along and ask me if I needed help from them. They would be offering it to me for free. We just hang out and just talk about the project, and then they're on board. So it was it was my luck in a way. And I also, with my actors, two main leads, they also, I think only one of them had some previous acting experience, but only for school projects too. So it was kind of their first time acting for a more of a festival level thing, because we had to go in knowing that it's going to be screened at a festival, so a lot of us had expectations for ourselves. A lot I was kind of pressure, but fun pressure. And so my cast and crew kind of just came along pretty organically and very fast too. And in between, there's kind of some kind of dealing with people's different availabilities for production days, because some of them are more free, but some of them are in the professional field, so they actually have work to do, and they're not that free during the summertime to shoot other projects. So that was kind of stressful during the pre-production, trying to figure out the schedule, but somehow in the end, everything just worked. And it was great. It took a little bit longer than what I thought the shoot day was to be scheduled at first, which was like around about the weekend. We definitely had some pickup days, and even during the post-production, we had some ADR to re-record the dialogue, just because during the rough cut, some things just don't work out. But I think as long as there is some sort of flexibility within the crew, and even just with yourself, with your own schedule, I think things will work out eventually. Because we are actually given, it's a short amount of time, but we're given enough time to work on this.
Yeah, those are all great points. So yeah, again, you have this sort of 4-week period where you sort all of that out. And yeah, your coordinator is also there for you to help you find crew and collaborators or figure out how you would work with them. Samyukta, I know you had a more different situation. You actually shot your own film. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about that and why you chose to do that.
Yeah, I think the shooting my own film, it was something, actually, before I applied to the program, I definitely wanted to try my hand at cinematography. That was something else I kind of applied to the program with, as a space to kind of test that part of filmmaking out that I hadn't been able to do on my own. But then it just so happened, with the way the story ended up going, and then wanting to tell something a bit more intimate about a South Asian woman, and then deciding early on in the process that I didn't want to do an open casting call, and then instead turning to my mother to do it, things kind of fell into place, also very serendipitous, and that I was able to use my family's home to shoot, which I know, like, that if that hadn't been the case, I would have had to do like location scouting and kind of some of the more traditional elements that go into making a short film. But luckily I didn't have to do that. With that being said, I did have a lot of support from very generous friends who helped me, do a lot of set design, because I thought, okay, if I have this one space, let me try and make it look as nice as it can for the purpose of the story. So even though I didn't have some of the other elements of the filmmaking process to kind of dive into, I try to use this experience as a way to kind of hone in on the parts that I did have to focus on. So for example, I spent a lot of time on cinematography in terms of like just figuring out the camera, knowing that I was going to shoot. And I should say I'm not a cinematographer, so that's the caveat there. But in terms of just making a very detailed shot list, I think I had like 120 shots on a shot list over like 3 days. And this is what I mean by ambitious. So things like that, but also spending a lot more time on set deck than maybe someone else would. And just a lot more time just speaking to my actor, who is my mom. But yeah, production, I think, was, things just don't go the way you think they will go. So I think what was really nice is having that 4-week period. I was able to do my shoot kind of earlier in that 4-week window. So I was able to kind of look at the footage and realize and see that I needed pickup days. So I think it just benefits everybody to do things as early as possible, even if you don't feel like you're ready, because I don't think I felt ready at all. And maybe Yi, I know we talked about this, like just never feeling ready, but it was so important that we just kind of bit the bullet and shot so that you would know what you were getting so that you could make adjustments after, because the program does allow you time to have that window after production to fix things or do additional work as you need, because I definitely use that additional time to get a lot of sound and a lot of, a few pickup days to get more footage.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I love what you mentioned there about how to use those 4 weeks, knowing that, if it's your first time filming it on your own, maybe you want to film earlier so you can go back and, rework it, or, build in time for rehearsals or test shoots. I did see that there is a question about restrictions for casting actors. So I'm not able to answer that right now, but for anyone who is wondering about that and that's their situation with their application, please send me an email and I will respond promptly. But just right now I have, some behind the scenes pictures up here. Rhoda, who's not here right now, actually shot everything and did sound or made use of his actors who were present to also do some location sound recording. So we have a wide range of sort of production styles. And some more behind the scenes pictures from past Unsung Voices cohorts who worked in animation and who were pretty much working on their own. And so a lot of their production time was spent on, building these sets or making the illustrations. Or for example, with documentary, a lot more time was spent editing. And that leads us into the third part of the program, which I don't really have pictures here because this is the less glamorous part, and I'm sure Samyukta and Yi can talk about this. Editing is really difficult. You'll have about 5 weeks for it. At our group sessions, which will still be once per week, you'll be expected to bring, your assembly cuts, your rough cuts, so that everyone can share their progress and also give feedback. So although you may be all over the country and we're all meeting remotely, and can't actually physically be at each other's productions, you do still play a huge part in each other's films in this way. And, this is also a very vulnerable part of the program where, you're getting near to the end of the film and things might have changed, or you might feel, there's just a lot of challenges with editing. But, everyone is there to sort of support each other and give you some of that extra motivation, knowing that you're all in the same boat. During this time, you can also make use of, meeting with your mentor to also get their feedback on your edit. The final stages of the program are sort of, again, less glamorous, but it's just about, delivering the files and us coordinating sound and color for you. So we actually have a team of sound editors and colorists that you'll be working with. So there is a short period where you are speaking with them to finalize the look of your film. So that is something to also just be prepared for. So while you do submit your film by the end of August, you do still need to be available throughout September because that process can kind of be spread out. And then there is the world premiere. So we actually were able to have an in-person premiere last year, and that is the plan this year as well. It's going to be a hybrid festival. So that means your films will also be available online. And so family and friends across the country can watch it. You as the filmmaker will be invited as a special guest to the festival, and transportation and accommodations are covered for those that are coming out of town. All right, we are now at the next part of our info session that I'm sure many people are excited about, which is just going over the application in more detail, and we'll also give you some tips and some and you can also chime in at any point. So the application is on, if anyone's checked it out yet, it's on Google Forms. I just want to make sure that people know you have to be logged into your Google account to fill it out. It will say that it's saving your answers, but just make sure that you are writing your answers elsewhere just in case something goes wrong with the Google Forms. We're not able to recover that if there's an issue with that. So just be aware of that. But basically there's two parts. So there is an about you part. It's just to check for your eligibility. And then we also want to know, why this program and to hear more about your experience with media art, writing, film. I know someone asked earlier, is it an eligibility requirement that you have some previous experience in film? Again, the answer is no, but it is helpful for us to get a sense of, why do you want to make a film? And what are the other skills that you're bringing that could translate to film? So, you might be a writer, you might be a photographer, you might be an illustrator. Those are all important to highlight. And there is an option to share a link to a sample work or reel, but again, that is not something that will, disqualify you if you don't have that. And then the second part of the application is the project proposal. So again, keep in mind that it is for an 8-minute short film. So we want to learn more about the idea, what interests you, and as well, what areas you think you would want to work on throughout the program to accomplish this idea. It's very brief. It's only 250 words for that part. So keep that in mind, as well as the fact that you will have to sort of explain how it speaks to the theme, which is and could be anything. We're hoping it's a little different this year. It's it could really mean anything. So please do not let it restrict you. Another part of the project proposal is why you. So we ask you to provide a brief bio. This is a little bit different from the about you section. This is where we want to know what's your connection to this story that you're proposing. That is also really helpful to know. In terms of your relationship to this idea. There is also the option, instead of submitting, these 500 words for your proposal, is a 2 to 3 minute video to answer the above. And reminder, application deadline, April 21st at 9 p.m. EST. It's not midnight, so please make sure your applications are in by that time. I will go over the next part of our application tips, but I will answer the next question after. As I mentioned before, the theme is not meant to restrict you. It could inspire anything from like a line in the film to a feeling or memory that you want to tap into. And we're going to go over these 3 tips. Yi and Samyukta can also speak to their own experience about this. It sounds a little contradictory, but keep in mind that we would like to hear something specific, but also something that is open to creativity, to change. And we also want to get the sense that you're open to, problem solving and welcoming challenges, or again, changes in your idea, which Samyukta and Yi have already spoken about. So in terms of being specific, I think you mentioned it was like a specific experience that you were tapping into happening at the same time that, you were applying to this program. And Samyukta, you did mention before, there was sort of this very specific idea about a certain character, but things sort of changed throughout the program, and you were open to making more of those changes throughout editing. So I think, would you like to speak a little bit more about that? Oh, sorry, Samyukta.
Okay, for be specific, yeah.
Sorry, for be open to challenges. I know.
Oh, open to challenges.
Yes, your editing stage. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I think I've heard someone say, like, or people often say, your film is made 3 times, like in the writing, in the actual production, and the editing. And that's definitely what I found. Like I had, that's the same experience that I had. In the editing stage, it completely just, it's going to sound bad, but it was stressful fun again, of like, I felt like I was starting from scratch once more, because I had all this footage now. And because I was so open to being flexible, I wasn't committed to necessarily these are the plot points that I wanted to hit. And I think that also worked out in my favor, because I did take a more experimental approach, or at least a non-linear approach than I was used to before, because coming from a writing background, I was used to a traditional narrative structure. So coming into this program, I really knew that, I think given how I'm working with these very vague ideas and working with my mother, who's not a professional actor, so sometimes you just don't have the footage that you need in order to get the scene to work. So you need to start shifting things in the edit. I just was very open to that to begin with. And I think maybe if I was doing this all on my own, it would have just been far scarier than it was. But because I had the cohort, I had my mentor, I had the program coordinators, I felt very safe in that I knew that no matter what that 4-week editing period, how painful it was in the moment, that, and maybe I couldn't see that the feeling was landing, I had to trust that other people could see it. And so by the time you get to that stage, you've known everyone for 4 to 5 months, and that trust, I think, is quite natural by then. So it was scary, but I think it's something that, and maybe Yi, I'm sure has experienced, and I know some of the other members, participants have experienced this, is that things inevitably change. And I think with a program like this, it gives you a space to have that freedom to explore different aspects of the story you want to tell. And I found that quite liberating. So I thought it was a really, again, it was scary, but it was really, I felt like I was in safe hands with all the support that I had.
And G, I know you mentioned earlier that it felt like your idea really changed at the end, although that was not a negative thing. So maybe you can speak to about that experience going in with such a, actually, I think you went in already with a mood board. That's how specific you were.
Yeah, sure. I started off, same thing, concrete ideas, very ambitious. With the mood board, just doesn't know how to really tell the story in a professional filmmaking way. So throughout the process, same thing. I know, same with Samikta. I believe I really fully trusted that we're all in safe hands, because the trust we built and different people coming, different cohort members coming in with different skill sets, and especially with our super professional mentors, everything's great. You just gotta know what you want and how to ask questions, and just keep on asking questions, asking for feedbacks, and be open to taking in the feedbacks. And what I did was definitely I changed a lot about my script, and especially if it's inspired by me, my experience and my friends' experiences, it can get really personal, and I have to eventually come to a point where I know how much of the story do I really want to tell people about, and how much do I just want to show and hint, and how much I could just leave out and even just change it up and change the ending and all that sort of things. So I was very open going into it, even though it's a very personal thing. And at the end, you have to separate the story from yourself, because it's not just yours anymore. You have to live it out to the world. And so in a way, it kind of helped a little with the changes, so it doesn't feel as personal anymore, and it feels more of a fictional thing rather than what's yours. And it really helps later on too, when when you have to show it to public, because it doesn't feel like it's a personal thing when they give you feedback, when the audience gives you feedback. So that's definitely really helpful. Just keep your mind open for sure through the process.
Yeah, those are great points, especially I think for people coming in with a specific idea that's related to a personal experience. So again, I did mention that before, that again isn't necessarily a requirement that your idea is, inspired by a direct thing that happened to you. And also, you don't have to get too personal if that's not something you're comfortable with. Yeah, as everything that you kind of said, the ways that you navigated filmmaking, but also navigating your feelings about this experience at the same time is, really important. That also kind of ties into, I think, some of the things you just said, ties into this third bit of advice, is just acknowledge your strengths and your weaknesses. So again, as I mentioned, it's all right if you don't have any filmmaking experience. We want to know what you can bring, if that's like leadership experience, or if because again, you're working with everyone, not necessarily on set, but in terms of sharing your ideas and collaborating in that way. So I also don't like using the word weaknesses either. So, just things that you actually want to learn more about and improve upon. So as Samyukta mentioned, you wanted to do cinematography, and that was great that you started with that right off the bat, and we could give you that opportunity and support you through it. And again, reminder, ideation and writing is part of the program at the start. So your project is allowed to evolve and change during that stage. We are getting to the end of our info session now. I'm just going to show the next slide, which has just some more information about how to stay in touch. So the recording of this session will stay on YouTube if you want to rewatch it. If you have questions about anything that I've said today, please send me an email. You can also follow us on social media for updates on other opportunities. We have some great industry and education programming coming up as well. Sign up for a newsletter. You will also get many updates through there. I do see one question here. So, and I think this is something that Samyukta and you can also answer. So from your experience, how manageable is balancing this program with a full-time job? And I'll let either Yi or Samyukta chime in.
Okay, I'll say something. I don't feel like I'm qualified to answer this because I don't really have a full-time job. I'm a full-time tattooer, but my full-time is sort of, I go into the studio 3 days a week. That's me physically being in my workspace. Other than that, I kind of just have to do emails, admin work here and there. So it's kind of freelancing, but committed freelancing, but all over the place. So I was privileged enough. I think I was privileged enough to be able to take a break in the summer from my actual work to focus on this, because I know that, well, before coming into the program, I know that I have to spend a lot of time on it. I just didn't know it would be so stressful and intense for me to learn everything from scratch. So I purposely and mindfully took some time off just to focus on this, and then went back to my work after I finished the program, which is really helpful. But I know a lot of people wouldn't be in the same place as me to be able to take a break like that. So please do this and be responsible to yourself and don't feel too pressured, and I'll let other people answer this question.
Yeah, similar to Yi, I think it just so happened that last year I happened to be freelance for those like 6 months of the kind of program duration. But that being said, I think with or without a full-time job, the key is, I think, as I said earlier, you're going to get from the program what you put in. So it's really, I think, a matter of just having a lot of discipline, and just, as like Yi put it very well, of just being good to yourself in that sense. Because even though I felt like I had a lot of time, it wasn't necessarily that I was using all that time to work on the film. I was still living life. I think I took like a 3-week break in between because I had family over. And so it wasn't completely unmanageable, I don't think. I think it's really just, you're so supported along the way. It's not like making a film completely by yourself over the span of 6 months. So it never felt like I was completely lost or in the dark. I always had someone to turn to kind of keep me sane if things got really stressful. But that being said, I think the program does allow enough time so that even if you come in with no idea, or if you come in with a fully fleshed out script, you still have a lot of time to build on each stage of the filmmaking process so that you are not completely overwhelmed. I think it's certainly manageable, but yeah, full-time job or not, you're going to get what you put in. So it's like, you can kind of decide how much effort you want to put into making a film that you're proud of.
Yeah, and I'll answer this question, I guess, based on from the logistical side of things, so you get an idea of the scheduling. So on the application site, there are a list of important dates and the phases, or the dates for each stage. I think the site also does say that during the times where we're meeting twice a week, that is a 4 to 6 hour commitment. We do schedule those meetings after 5 p.m. Eastern time. That is usually the time that works for most people. So do keep that in mind, and we hope that fits with most people's schedules. But do keep in mind, outside of the meeting time, you also want to make sure you have time for writing and preparing for your production, because these meetings are, they're workshops. So they can also get, pretty intense, and we want you to be able to, get the full experience and get the most out of them. And attendance is obviously mandatory as well. So just something to keep in mind if you are working full time, if you have more of a set schedule versus a schedule that you might be able to move around. Keep in mind also that you want to be able to have your shoot dates, and if you're working with a crew, it helps to have a flexible schedule so that everyone else can also work on your shoot. So you can find a time where you can all work together. And maybe something else to keep in mind is also being available, so you can do things like equipment rental pickups, or having time to test equipment out. I do see a question here. Does the program provide any support with equipment rentals, or will we be resourcing them on our own? So I did mention earlier that for most participants, you will have either a credit or a discount. So we work with artist friend centers from wherever you are, and we try to find something where you can get equipment at a discounted rate and or get a credit for them. I can't give a solid answer right now because it depends on where you're working from, but you also get a $750 production budget, so you can also use that to get reimbursed for equipment rentals. And you are also welcome to use your own equipment if that is something you're interested in, and that's always something you can mention in your application as well. We are near the end. I mean, technically we have 2 more minutes left, so I'll just see if there are any other questions from the audience. If there's anything else you want to ask, you can always send me an email, jennifer@realasian.com.
Since we have time, can I chime in back, like going back to the full-time job thing?
Yes, of course.
Although Samyukta and I didn't have a full-time job during the time of the program, I think we had other cohorts members who had full-time jobs. And we didn't know until they talked to us about it. It was like, how did you manage this? Because we have very different, in this case, like film creating style in a way that we didn't know how it could be less stressful for other people. But they did it, and they made really great films. So don't be discouraged if that's a thing. You don't have to give up your job on this.
No, it's definitely totally possible. But again, as you said, also make sure you have the capacity and take care of yourself as well, balancing those things out. And again, we try to have some flexibility in the program. So for example, the 4 weeks, you'll know ahead of time when you should be shooting. So hopefully that is something that you can plan around. All right, I don't see any more questions left. So I think we'll wrap things up now. The links to our social media are in the video description, and the link to the application form and information are all there. If you're sharing the application with anyone, just make sure that you're sharing the website from Real Asian, because that is actually where there is the description of the theme. So just keep that in mind. But on that site, you will find the link to the Google form. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for attending and for your great questions, and Samyukta and Yi, your insights into your films. Yeah, looking forward to everyone's applications, and thank you so much for your interest and for showing up today. Bye, everyone.
Bye.